In this topic, we will focus on conflicts of interest and why conflict of interest situations might also be relevant when talking about good research practice and data quality. This cartoon is of course an over-exaggeration of a conflict of interest situation, where a scientist is put under pressure to deliver some specific data sets as compensation for receiving financial support. But we will later look at some real-life case studies. Some are actually not that far away from this example. So how are conflicts of interest defined? A conflict of interest involves situations in which the integrity of the research activity is or may be compromised by financial or other interests. As a consequence, this can lead to biased judgments, biased design and conduct of your experiments, compromised research outcomes, or compromised communication to different interest groups. A formal definition reads as follows. Conflicts of interest are defined as circumstances that create a risk that professional judgments or actions regarding a primary interest will be unduly influenced by a secondary interest. So here we differentiate between primary and secondary interests. Let's look into that in more detail. Primary interests can be summarized as the ultimate goals we would like to achieve as professionals. So for scientists, these could be a growth in our scientific knowledge, providing high quality education, generating the best new drugs for patients, improving the well-being and safety of any research subjects, promoting research integrity, or the dissemination of research outcomes. Secondary goals for scientists can also be related to professional goals or what is commonly recognized as an important output of professional activities. For example, for scientists, such secondary profession-related interests would be publishing more scientific articles, obtaining more research funding, getting recognition and fame. These goals are related to personal interests, such as earning more money, achieving some political goals, having sufficient time for family and friends, or other interests related to religion, traveling, or social activities. A prime example of a conflict of interest is financial interest. And financial interests are probably what we think about when talking about causes of conflict of interest. Financial interests can include compensation from employment by others than the grantee institution, paid consultancy services, or for serving on an advisory board, getting shares of a stock market listed company, financial benefits or compensation from patents, paid expert reports, speakers' fees, and gifts in general or compensation for trips and traveling. Importantly, financial interests may be there even if we believe they are not, or when we think their impact is neglectable. So we need to pay extra care in these situations. One issue related to conflicts of interest is, especially in academia, that our awareness about potential conflict of interest issues is limited to what we find in the instructions for authors section provided by scientific journals. And these instructions are often not very detailed or helpful when it comes to actually identifying any minor or major conflict of interest situations. However, what is important and highlighted here in the text, taken from the European Journal of Neuroscience, is that quite often there is a high degree of uncertainty and some potential sources of conflict may or may not turn out into actual conflict situations. But if we are aware of potential sources of conflict of interest, which might influence our objectivity, even if not 100% certain, we still need to disclose it. And if we do so transparently, it is also important to note that it usually won't preclude any manuscript from being published. Let's now look at a few real-life examples for conflict of interest situations. In April 2021, it was published that the number of infections with the coronavirus was actually over 80 times higher than previously believed. As a consequence, and based on this dataset, the newly calculated fatality rate of the coronavirus would then be in the same range as the flu, thereby questioning any measures like lockdowns of the economy or social life, which happened all over the world. However, in this publication, it was never communicated that the study was funded by the founder of an American airline, who has, as you can imagine, some direct financial interests in avoiding any further lockdowns and in allowing national and international traveling again. Given that we don't know whether and to what degree such a powerful sponsor might have influenced the author's objectivity, the involvement of the sponsor should have been declared as a potential source of conflict of interest. This is an example based on an academic research study which was funded by a non-profit patient advocacy group, which apparently has no industry connection. And in line with that, the following publication, where the results of the study were presented, did not disclose any potential conflict of interest. However, the authors themselves had filed a patent application before the scientific publication appeared online. And in such cases, the authors should have openly disclosed the existence of such a patent application, as there might now be some additional commercial implications or benefits attached to the dataset generated other than just a gain in academic knowledge. How can we deal with potential conflict of interest situations? First of all, it is important to note that there is no one-fits-all solution, and we may have to treat and analyze every situation individually. Usual measures include, for example, recruiting an external expert who could provide an independent oversight of our research, implementing quality measures like blinding procedures, which reduce the risk of introducing bias, insulating investigators from knowledge about the impact of financial interest through blind trust type devices. A blind trust is a trust established by the owner or trustor, given another party, the trustee, full control of the trust. The trustee has control over the assets and investments while managing the assets and any income generated in the trust. Blind trusts are often established when individuals want to avoid conflicts of interest between their employment and investments. And we can try to prevent some situations from happening, like simply not accepting any free gifts, meals, or samples, and stop relationships where the conflict is just too great. Overall, the primary goal of managing conflict of interest situations is to minimize the extent to which the design, conduct, and reporting of research is influenced, consciously or unconsciously, by financial or other personal or secondary considerations. So, avoiding any conflict of interest situation is, of course, the best way to reduce any negative impact on our research activity. But transparent reporting is always a valuable measure, as it enables readers of our reports and publications, or people listening to our presentations, to judge the situation themselves, and it helps to avoid any unpleasant surprises. That's why the best advice at this point is, if in doubt, disclose.